Thank you so much, Amanda. And believe me, I would have loved to be with you over there in Vancouver. But for now, connecting from Washington, D.C., I'm extremely happy to talk to you a little bit, especially, Amanda, what I wanted to concentrate on, which I think fits perfectly in what the new Carbon Consortium is trying to do, is what the journey we have been advancing at Bayer to truly make a difference when it comes to carbon capture in agriculture. What does it take? What are the challenges? What do we need moving forward? And why it is so relevant? So for that, if you allow me, I decided I usually don't do many slides, but I decided it would be useful today to share with you some of the slides. And so if I could, share my screen, I see that. Amanda, let me start by saying, talk about agriculture, and you were mentioning a little bit before of some of the conversations you had on carbon capture and regenerative agriculture. When you think about agriculture, all of us, we know two main things, unfortunately. One, that agriculture is responsible for a good part of global emissions. So, unfortunately, part of the problem. But second, that also agriculture and farmers are among the most adversely affected by climate change. And if you think about that, there's only one consequence, logical consequence that we can think about, which is we need a paradigm shift when it comes to agriculture on how we produce and how we feed the world. And this is how Bayer started thinking about this. We completely need a new vision. The good news is that agriculture is a sector where you can reduce emissions like any other, transportation, energy, etc. But it's probably the only sector where you can also remove carbon from the system. And this is the amazing thing about agriculture that we need to harness, and where we need everybody in the room with you, the science, the technology, the researchers, the universities, to work towards this. For Bayer, it meant that we changed our vision to say the way we're going to orient our new vision for the strategy of how we want to do business is regenerative agriculture. And therefore, we launched this Pro Carbono initiative to do two things: support growers to adapt more sustainable practices, and on the other hand, continue increasing productivity. Then we know we need to feed the world, and soon it will be 10 billion people. So if you will, we were thinking about, in the past, farmers have been rewarding for what they produce. In the future, what we want is for them to be rewarding not only for what they produce, but how they produce it. And this is how we're moving ahead. The principles we're thinking about, it has to be really focused on the grower. And here, certainly our target, and you were mentioning smallholders are a big part of the solution, big part of the sector, 550 million smallholders in the world that need access to the best technology to leapfrog and to be able to improve their livelihoods and also improve their the food security of the world. But we need to think about the whole spectrum of farmers. Second, it needs to be science-based. It needs to be transparent and based on collaboration. So those were the four principles that we thought about when we launched this Pro Carbono initiative. If I can go to the next slide, Yasser. We started, and probably it's a bit slow, but we started then what we called a carbon ecosystem for agriculture, mapping the carbon ecosystem for agriculture. And this had to be in Brazil. This carbon journey in Brazil, which has been traditionally one of the powerhouses feeding the world, had, as I was mentioning, two objectives. One, to allow to truly insert agriculture in future carbon markets. And second, to reinforce the commitment to sustainability. And here, I truly mean reinforce commitment to sustainability, because in Brazil, the truth is that it's not only one of the powerhouses of agriculture, feeding 800 people in the world, but also many of the practices that we know are sustainable today, like no-till practice, were started also there in the 70s. And no-till, for those of you who are not experts in agriculture, means that you don't plow the land. And with that, you don't need to expose carbon into the air, but use different practices. So we started this journey 4 years ago. So in Brazil, and it has, in principle, the following pillars for us to achieve this journey. One, increasing these sustainable practices, right? Looking at the soil, looking at the water, looking at how impact in nature. Second, continue increasing productivity, but in less land, with less resources, natural resources. Reduce the vulnerability, which is what I was talking about. Unfortunately, smallholders are the most vulnerable in the whole system, in agriculture in general. Then also think about the benefits and the partnership. And with that, I mean, what are the new green finance schemes? What are the incentives for sustainable practices that farmers can take advantage of in this path, in this journey? And the final pillar of this carbon journey that we started 4 years ago was, at some point, participate in carbon markets of agriculture once they are established. And we're still in the path towards that. If I can go to the next slide, this is what I want to share with you, which is the main challenges that my colleagues, our scientists, agronomists, and partners have encountered. As we began this journey, we saw we needed to overcome three main challenges. One, that we needed the science applied to tropical agriculture. All the knowledge that we have, technology, how does it truly apply to tropical agriculture? Second, that we needed to have a clarity about the impact of certain management practices in the carbon footprint of the crop or of the system we are looking into. And with that, I mean, we needed to figure out which agronomic practices can do two things: sequester more carbon as possible, at the same time keep it as longer as possible in the soil. And these practices I'm talking about is no-till, as I was mentioning, but also tools, enablers like the digital agriculture, something basic like crop rotation, cover crops, crops that can protect the soil in between so that it doesn't lose to water and humidity. Yield boosters, that it can be measures like looking at the density of the plants to increase that yield, and certainly optimizing the use of fertilizers. The third challenge that we think we need to overcome to truly realize this journey is, of course, the market acceptance. And that is based truly in the collaboration with others to allow for transparency and to be science-based. If I go to the next slide, we have been very lucky to partner with one of the leading state-owned institutions in Brazil, which is Embrapa, that has been pioneer in many of the improvements and innovation towards agriculture. And again, we needed this collaboration that by now has all these partners that you can see there. And those of you who might be familiar with Brazil might recognize some of them. It needed, as I mentioned, to be science-based and consistent, to be about knowledge, about collaboration, and about science. And this takes time. And certainly, when I mean that Brazil has been really a pioneer in many of the practices, it doesn't mean that there's no challenges, certainly deforestation and others, and it doesn't mean that we don't have a way to go. But here we had all the knowledge partners and the basics of agriculture to truly start this. If I go to the next slide, it also meant that you needed to start truly working with farmers, committing them. For example, the farmers that joined the program committed for 3 years. They also committed with a contract, if you will, to use only sustainable practices with us. This also meant that they signed an agreement with us and that we would be looking at validating every step of the way at what we called farm level, meaning that we are doing soil samples in these plots of land, and not only from satellite, but truly going there and looking at the samples in the soil directly. Where are we now? This is the pro-carbon journey for you to have a little bit of an overview, but where are we now? If I go to the next slide, we have worked so far in this pro-carbon journey with over 1,900 farmers in Brazil, in 16 different states. We have managed to include 220,000 hectares of land, and by now we have what we think is the largest soil analysis of 300,000 soil samples of this journey that we started. It's a long way, but we're getting there, and we have seen that productivity increase in average for farmers has been in around 10%. So for us, it was essential. How could we prove to farmers that sustainability and productivity are not against each other, but can go hand in hand? And therefore, this is an important marker in order to support the transformation for the farmers. If we go to the next slide, let me also talk about a second part of this carbon ecosystem project that we advanced, which is the pro-carbon commodities. With these, we started looking not only in general at the land, but then also in particular, taking one grain at a time, and we started with soy, and going toe-to-toe to truly capture every part of the carbon footprint of that soy. And so we started, as you can see, in one state of Brazil, almost 160,000 hectares of land. This means 4 million bags of soy. And we've been able to track every moment of the seed. The moment it goes to the land, it's to all the carbon that the inputs that it has, like crop protection, fertilizers, or the transportation they might use, to the transportation when it's being sold. And we've been able, through these practices, to show that you can reduce the carbon footprint of soy by 64% in average with the farmers we have worked with. So this is, again, a tremendous success that you can show that in this time. And now you don't stop there. You go to different types of grains and continue mapping, if you will. What did we do? We had this footprint, so-called, measured, audited, and tracked. So we had an external auditor track what I'm telling you, the 64% reduce in carbon footprint by Veritas, Bureau Veritas. And we had a commitment by collaboration with a trader like ADM that bought this low carbon soy from the farmers, and also was able to pay a premium for that. So if I go to the next slide, let me just say, this has been a 4-year journey. It requires partners like Embrapa that develop protocols that are transparent, that are looking into exactly taking the soil samples at farm level, working with the farmers, giving them all the technical advice for these sustainable practices. This means it takes time, and it takes all the partners that I mentioned, but certainly in the next steps, to go beyond Brazil and to go further, developing those protocols and developing standards that are recognized by others, we need to collaborate with many more research institutions and universities. And this is why, Amanda, when you contact me and told me about this new Carbon Economy Consortium, this is exactly the place where we need to talk about this, talk about the challenges. We're not there yet, and look for collaboration that really is advancing the science, the technology, and that can be credible for others, so that at one point we truly make agriculture part of the solution and we truly capture carbon. If I might say, thank you so much. This is we can go to the final slide, but what I want to say is just it's a game changer. We're still on that journey. And I want to share my email. I'm not the expert. My colleagues in Brazil that are advancing these are. And for any of you connected today and in the room, I think there's opportunities for us to collaborate, and very happy to connect you with our experts to advance this conversation.